Guess what? It's Friday again, so welcome back to the Soaring Show. Thank you for all of your comments and guest suggestions this week. All will be revealed soon. Remember, if you like the show and want to help us grow, like the video, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what news we've missed this week. First up, the Junior Worlds finished last weekend. In the standard class, we had Henry Inigo-Jones placing 6th, with his teammate Ollie Ramsey coming in 22nd. The club class boys were struck by bad luck, with George Downing being forced to withdraw early into the competition due to aircraft problems. George White fought till the end on his own and managed a day win on the final day. He placed 18th overall. Congratulations guys on getting through a challenging competition and flying safely. You may remember we interviewed Ollie just before this competition in episode 2. If you haven't yet, you should watch it. He and Henry are staying in Ostrov for the Europeans. Henry will be competing and Ollie will be team captain. Just to summarise, Ollie has so far this year sat an A-level exam in the morning and then won a day at the UK Nationals in the afternoon. He then competed in the Junior World Gliding Championships and he's now representing the UK as team captain. Oh, and he's 18. We'll need to catch up soon. Good flying wasn't limited to Europe this week. We also had some fantastic flights in the UK. Ed Oliver, who you may remember from last week's show for completing his 300 kilometers, has this week completed his 500 kilometers. The longest flight on the ladder last weekend was also a surprising one. Manny Williams did 760 kilometers in a Slingsby Kestrel 22, which took over 9 hours. For those unfamiliar, the Kestrel 22 is nearly 50-year-old open-class glider. Good effort. Currently ongoing is the Hosboz Challenge Cup. They haven't had a scrub day yet, which might indicate that the summer season is finally here. Next week we have the Club Class Nationals at Nympsfield. Jake will be there Saturday night to deliver a British team-style debrief session. Staying on the theme of competitions, because 'tis the season, we have the 2-seater Pockleton Comp and the Junior Nationals are later this month. We are starting to get dates from the BGA for the 2025 season. At Nav Boys we have a new product. It's the Pilot Aware FX. It's an interesting little grey box. It can detect all of the most popular conspicuity devices and integrates with existing FLARM setups. We put this one in my glider to try it and so far we're impressed. We'll probably release a video on it next month once I've had a chance to run it through its paces. And now, as always, over to Jake with the weather.
Thank you, Dorian. Okay, let's get into it. So, looking at the surface pressure chart for the weekend. This is Friday midnight, going into Saturday, and we can see a cold front here that's passing through, sort of looks like in the early hours Saturday morning over the UK. You can see behind it in the north, in Scotland, we've got trough lines. And later in the day, the air mass doesn't change too much. The winds look quite slack. You see the ISO bars are separated quite wide, so lighter winds. But you can see what's coming Sunday. Sunday looks like we've got a load of fronts out to the west of us, and you can see the air mass that is bringing in all weekend rather, is a sort of westerly, southwesterly, which means it's going to be coming over the ocean. So it's going to be quite a wet, quite a maritime air mass, and we'll see how that affects the weather later on. Going into Monday night, it looks like we've got all the fronts converging and smashing into us on Monday. Something to look forward to. Okay, I've centred the forecast on Stafford, which looks like it's going to have a decent day both days. So Saturday, looking pretty bright and sunny, highs to 22, light surface winds, westerly, west-northwest. You can see it's gusting, which indicates good chance of thermal activity. And then just as a cross-reference, I look at the BBC, and again, very similar for Saturday. Looking at Sunday looks similar, but the air masses, the wind's coming from a slightly different direction, a light southwesterly for most of the day. And the BBC agrees. The BBC says it's going to be a bit more cloudy on Sunday, so we'll look out for that on the SkySight forecast in a minute. So on SkySight, potential flight distance for Saturday, looking good in the north of England, south of Scotland, and north, in fact pretty much all of Wales as well, looking pretty good. The clubs right in the southwest of England might also have half reasonable conditions, and the South Island as well looks half reasonable. Let's look at that in a bit more detail. So if we start at 10 AM, just looking at thermal updraft velocity, thermal strength and boundary shear ratio. So 11 AM local, it looks like we start getting decent thermals across the north of England, south of Scotland. You can see there's little rain symbols dotted all over the place, so it's quite a wet, showery air mass in places. And you can see the south of the UK is going to be dominated by showery activity by the looks of it. But in the sort of the peak of the day, the middle of the afternoon, it looks like there's good thermals in places, 3.5 knots generally, occasional 4.5 knots, which is pretty good day for us. Just going to zoom in and let's look at cumulus cloud base. Again, starting at 10 AM, that's 11 AM, so the light green is 4,200, the green is 3,600, and then the light blue is 3,000 feet. So it looks like it starts to kick off in Wales and the north of England just before midday. It actually looks quite good in places. Obviously you've got to bear in mind that there's high ground in Wales, so even though these altitudes look pretty good, you obviously want them to be high above the peaks. And it looks like during sort of the height of the day we might see 5,500 in the places where it's good. Again, the south is dominated by the showery activity. The southwest, you might see 3,600 down here in Cornwall, Devon. And let's look at the rain radar from midday, and then 2:30, and then 4 o'clock. So you can see there's lots and lots of rain in the south of England and North Scotland and Northern Ireland. Overdevelopment, it's quite good just to try and gauge what the weather's going to be doing on the day, how tricky it's going to be to go cross country. So you can see even in the north where it's forecast to be good, there's a risk of overdevelopment. I tend to say these turquoise and green colours are not too much to worry about. When it starts going yellow, then it's a pretty high risk of overdevelopment. So it actually looks pretty good across most of England. And a quick glance at the wind as well. Just you can see the air masses coming straight off the ocean. But pretty light winds all day. 10 knot westerly, 15 knots in places. Looks good. So yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd do tomorrow morning is compare the latest forecast run. On SkySight, the latest run is always written down here in this bottom left corner, so you know that you've got the latest run. Usually updates about 6 AM, something like that, on the day you're going flying. And yeah, ordinarily I'd look in pretty much all of these features down the left here. I'd try and get a clear idea of what's happening during the day. Right, let's look at PFD for Sunday. Sunday being a bit further away, I'm not going to go in quite as much detail, so I'm just going to use XC speed to see generally where the weather looks best. So you can see there's decent conditions across much of England on Sunday. And it looks like it keeps going across the sort of centre of the country until about 5:30 even in places. So again, Sunday actually doesn't look too bad a day. We'll just have a quick glance at cloud base just to see what sort of numbers are currently forecast. 3,600 at 11 AM, and then going up to 4,000 just after midday. And in the peak of the afternoon, look at 2:30, 3 o'clock, you can see these yellows across the middle of the country. We're getting towards 5,000 feet. So not quite as high, but it looks relatively good over quite a big area. So if you can get to these good conditions, should have a reasonable day. And you can see all that frontal associated rain well out to the west of us, making its way in on Sunday evening. Okay, quick look at Saw met Dave Masson. He says he's been doing a bit of flying recently, which is good. We love to see that. So forecast for Saturday, he's saying for Lasham, short window, good conditions with either Q-base 5000 or blue to 5000 plus. For Lasham, might get a short fast 100 to 200k plus, and that's probably partly going to be affected by that rain. You can see the last front clears mid-afternoon, so you're going to be waiting for that front to go through at Lasham and across much of the south. Sid's weather. Let's just see if he mentions Saturday. No, he hasn't done an update for Saturday, but keep an eye out for that if you're flying in the southwest of the country on Saturday morning. And then Phil's weather. Outlook for Saturday. He's got the same problem as Lasham really, whether the clearance reaches Dunstable in time for a full soaring day. Sunday models vary, but probably quite good. So it sounds like the forecasters are singing from the same hymn sheet as the forecast, which is a good sign for now. And as usual, in the morning, always recommend checking the satellite pictures and the webcams to try and make sure that the latest forecast run is tying up with what's actually happening. Okay, that's all from me. I'll pass back to Dorian. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Usually at this stage, I play the interview of an interesting person in gliding, but like I mentioned last week, we're making this segment a bi-weekly event. This is to allow you to submit your questions. Our guest next week will be Josh Setford, who's gone from gliding bum to big jets. So, what do you want to know? Leave your questions for Josh in the comments below, and I'll see you all next week.